Well, thank you for what you said, Joe. Can I say that he's quite right, nothing has changed. Elvin always gets it wrong. My appearance here was due to the fact that I saw an advertisement for a senior research fellow at Southampton in fluid dynamics and the turbulence in the aeroplane, or in flight, I forget one of the two journals, and I applied for that position. I was already coming over here on study leave, and my English wife was rather cross when I accepted the offer the university gave me, because she wanted to live in Adelaide. She's an Englishwoman. Having married me, I suspect, to get out of this country, as many ex-servicemen wanted to after the war. Anyway, I came here for 3 years, that was my promise, and I forgot to leave. Also, Joe taking us back 30 years, or perhaps, as Elvin says, a little longer, reminds me of a Saturday morning where the idea and the name of the ISVR was first born. Now, you mightn't believe it, but in those days, we worked Saturday mornings, didn't we?
Yes.
Staff, students, not always all the students, some of the students, and certainly the technical and secretarial staff. It was the secretaries who first objected and led the rot into abandoning Saturday morning, but that was very useful. We were in Elvin's office just across the way here, his new office in Lancaster. His previous office, only about 2 people could get into, apart from his desk. It was up the top of the stairs in the Eustace building, and I don't think you'd find it now. But there we were. I think it was Brian and Dennis and me and Elvin and maybe 1 or 2 others. And Elvin was wondering, the way he often does, those of us who know him, what we should do next, because we were faced with a situation which faces much research in this country now. They're abandoning all the sponsored research from the MOD, bit by bit. In then, they were abandoning the government-sponsored research on aircraft, and aircraft noise, and aircraft development. And they were abandoning the government support to the aircraft industry as a whole. Where do we go next, said Elvin. And fresh from Adelaide, not quite so fresh, perhaps 3 or 4 years afterwards, I remembered a very successful pattern which had lasted many, many years, I think since about 1900 to when I was there. And that was the Waite Agricultural Research Institute. It had 3 bits. One bit was undergraduate teaching, the second bit was postgraduate teaching and research, and the third bit was consulting. And so I suggested that as a blueprint for the ISVR. Elvin said his memory is hazy, so he won't deny it. It's quite true. You said this at your farewell talk before you went to Loughborough. I haven't forgotten. Anyway, we then had to choose a name, and I wanted to call it the Institute of Environmental Engineering. But that went down like a lump of lead with the boss. And he thought of sound and vibration research. Noise and vibration first, but sound sounded better, so that's what it was. Then there was another problem, because the university authorities were horrified at the suggestion that part of the engineering faculty should become a research institute. This was a new idea to the university and therefore regarded with great suspicion. And so they turned us down, more or less. And there was a long correspondence between Elvin, I guess, and the Vice-Chancellor, Gwilym James, who liked theatres, as you no doubt heard earlier. And the net result was Elvin went off to America in his usual summer jaunt for 3 months or whatever it was, and left Phil and me here, and we sat down and I wrote out a terms of reference Then Philip brought his editorial skills to bear to make them acceptable, and we sent that to Gwilym James, and that is in the front of our first annual report as our terms of reference. No doubt Philip's skill was mainly responsible for the Vice-Chancellor changing his mind and accepting us. So we set up the Institute. Second problem was that the head of the Institute was also head of aeronautics, and there was another problem. So he often had to make up his mind which hat to wear. And we all suffered whilst he did this because he wasn't happy about either choice. He wanted both. He probably still does. Anyway, the other thing is that things that have been said about him was he was far-sighted. Before the Institute was formed and before the university agreed to having an institute, he appointed a reader in sound and vibration. That was me. And so at least the name was there, if not the Institute itself. And with that name, of course, was Mike Fisher and a secretary, I think it was Jenny. And we were a small research group, UGC supported, within the area department, with at least with the name, if not with all the glory. And I suppose we've grown from 3 then, if that's what we were then, to 300, Joe said, over the years. But we grew that big, you know, by the time Elvin left. We were about 300 then, I think, my memory doesn't. And the problem has been, over the last 20 years, to stay the same size, not to become so large we were unwieldingly and lost contact with each other, and yet remain viable. It's very difficult to run an organisation at the level. It's not difficult to grow, and we've seen some people find it not difficult to let things decay. But to keep them running on an even keel over these years says a lot for the skill of our directors and a lot for the dedication and contributions that all the members of the ISVR have made. So I thank you for, I think, the undeserved honour you've done me. I've had my reward in the existence of the ISVR. It's the reward, my reward for my life's work. But it's here and it looks like staying. And for that, I thank you for these small tokens. But really, the Institute is what I regard as my reward for my life's work. Thank you.